All right, let's begin our Find Your Center Sunday practice today. So I think this will be an interesting medley for you to kind of organize and balance your core layers. And especially when we go up to our basic platform, and then you'll see the mirroring of the poses when we get to our seated work. That's 3/4 of the way in, around 2 o'clock. Okay, so let's go ahead and come on to our bolster with our feet up. So the legs have an elevation. Your blocks are situated right beside your lower thighs. And when you come into that reclining state, I want you to get a feel for the back layer reaching. So bring your hands onto your bolster and lean forward so that you can feel your back actually gradually stretch. And then when you come up to center, reach your arms forward, a little bit higher than your shoulder height. And then lean back. And when you lean back, finding that tailbone spatially pressing kind of this bucket core that kind of lifts a little bit in the lower belly. And then you're going to move back forward and lean and let your hands drop down to the bolster. Let your chin tuck in. Inhale, lift up your head. And I want you to start to slide back. So my hands are beside my back layer, behind my lower spine. And as I walk the feet up onto the bolster, I'm going to push down into my feet, move my hips forwards, and then start to glide my spine down. And then place my knees open onto the blocks. So I'm going to situate the blocks so they're tilted in, contouring my legs. And then as I lower down my brain, feel kind of that experience of the, almost these two, I know that there's no sacrum at the brain base, right? It's that stem, but there's these two kind of basins. One that's the basin from your pelvis, when the knees are kind of out and focusing, you can really feel this kind of basket weave of the pelvis. So if you have a weighted bag, I want you to actually place that so it's at that space above, right, the belly spatially. So when you're moving the diaphragmatic zone, you'll probably feel that exercising of the tissues. We'll start with belly first. And then I want you to take your hands to grab your belt. And then as your belt is moved back overhead, hold on to that position of a strap. And then as you hold the belt, test the circulation in your shoulders like you're steering them. So I have my hands holding my belt much wider than shoulder width apart. It's kind of like a steering wheel in sorts. So when I bring my hands and I tilt side to side, I'm kind of steering the movement in my waist and my shoulders. So stay on your back, but I'm going to come up and just kind of give that emphasis so that when you are on your back, you got your belt, holding it wide, and you're moving your arms a little side to side. So that's kind of what the back is doing with your head on your blanket, right? So you still have a little bit of movement cycling through that upper zone. And then slowing that down until you steer into a parking spot for your shoulders. Sense the energy and flow in the upper region of the chest, spreading out into the arms, in the armpits. And then please let go of the belt. And then separate the chestal region by spreading out the arms and align the props. Remember, the idea here is to create some interest in your work, but also make an attempt at alignment, attempting to be aligned. That is the potential we might have today. So rest your eyes and then feel what orientation you want your sandbag to be on, your belly or right where the ribs intersect. It is up to you entirely. So you can choose if you want to move your sandbag just a little bit up below the sternum. Release your arms, both have the chest separation. And then as you have that gaze inwards, filter the air in through the nose, but also feeling the movement of the lower core body, the diaphragm descending, okay, and the ascending motion on the exhalation, which interesting medley of movement will feel as if it's gradually squeezing out and letting go. Eyes centering back in the skull. Let's start to sink into our practice today and gather your attention on the even rhythm of your breath. Especially if you have weight on your body. It can be any kind of weight, a bag of 5 to 10 pounds to support the strengthening of the diaphragm muscle and the corresponding respiratory muscles, right? The intercostals, the lungs, ribs. Now feel your leg muscles supported by the blocks, and I want you to gradually feel as if you're tilting the pelvis. So it's like you're pressing the tailbone a small amount into the ground so that you feel the arch through the lumbar spine. And then feel when you go to that formless state of anywhere spine, not necessarily dictating where it goes, but where it lands when you're in this form. And that's kind of a fundamental focus in the session, is where you land in the form of the pose, so to speak, or the shape. And then kind of when you feel it gets formless and you move, we use that awareness, and then we let movement bring us into the next position. So just kind of notice that assignment to alignment you effort for in the session, and feel when you can just kind of wander a little bit, make it a good home practice. And now let's keep the sand on, and we can move it up if it's a little easier to move your legs with the sand higher up on the ribs. And you're going to slide the blocks away and position the knees so as they point up, they kind of perk up. I want you to let your palms be flat down, and they're right by your side, so you're kind of scooting them in next to your side as you draw the right knee in towards the chest. And I want you to push the left foot down into that bolster and try to make that back space lengthen, and then change the sides. Right foot down, push, and if your bolster feels too far away, you can snag it with your right heel and kind of drag it in a little closer to you. Nothing has to have alignment be perfect, but it feels centered. Now as your left knee is drawing in, change sides one more time. So left foot down, right leg in. It feels good to have the bolster close enough that you can kind of take a jab at it with your left foot right now, pushing down, and then change the side. And as that left leg draws in, feel where your neck weight is, feel the gentle stretch in the neck. And then what's going to move up and down is going to be at the very top of the thigh at the pelvic rim. So I want you to take that sand aside, and you're going to use either a ball or a block between the knees. So if you have a ball that's, about that width of a block, maybe a tiny bit closer in, narrow, you can use that, or you can use a block. Most will have a block, I know. I like the ball if I have that to use. Okay, so use a block or a ball. And you're going to squeeze into that kind of barrier, right? It's a separator and it helps open up the back. So I want you to squeeze into the ball or block, and then hands are down besides your rear. So you don't want it too high up on the hips, but right besides the rear. So my elbows point out. And I'm going to push down with my hands, and then my work is to draw the knees in towards the chest, but go about halfway of your maximum with the legs. Notice if the hip flexors kind of wake up, if they fire and activate. I want you to work with lengthening your low back. So those of you that have kind of fiery hip flexors, then you're probably going to stretch your spine a little bit more so that you're adjusting. Stretch your arms open now to the shape of a T and bring your knees to the right. Center in, turn your head to the left, turn your neck gently left, and bring your knees through to the other side. So we're doing two different base layers. We started with knee to chest, now we're going knee side to side. And I'm going to do this practice, along with you, but when you are, either in observation or occasional observation would be, and most take a class in a screen, you're going to want to feel where you cross the knees to the side, what your intensity is in your hips, in your waist. It should be an exercise in a little bit of strength in the core. Okay, I don't want you to touch the knees down to the ground all the way. And that could be an easy way out. So palms are open. And then when you come back in, you're going to lower your feet down. Make sure you feel the bolster. You can do bridge pose with or without your bolster. Okay, so you're going to push down. And as you lift your hips up, the object between the knees does not need to be particularly pushed into with your leg muscles, but feel when you lift up your hips and notice this curve in the neck that starts to go into experience of pressure. So I would encourage you for these moments in bridge to move the blanket away so you have a natural curve, but it's not over flexing your neck. Okay, stretch your arms overhead. I think we've been in the lift of the pelvis long enough. And then lower your spine down and go slower than your mind goes. If you can let body slow you down. Let the pace of the body, how it can organize. Feel that arch in your spine. Feel the pressure of your feet on the bolster or floor. And then lift up the hips. And as we start to lift up through the back, I want you to stretch the front of the core of the body and work to push down and lift up. If you're really scrambling for feeling the definition in your legs, get rid of the bolster for a few times and just see what the difference is. And then lower the spine back down. Arms go along for the ride. Okay, feel the natural arch of the spine. Breathe. Feeling a gradual arch. And then inhale one more time up over with the arms. See how sometimes the arms go a little faster than the hips. It's not quite as dense through the spindly arms. Okay, now as you lower your spine down and ease the traction. Okay, you're going to bring the knees to the chest and you're going to either remove the ball and put it aside and get a block. You're going to need a block, okay? If you have a block, you remove the block and you grasp a hold and lift up your hips and slide the block under the back of the pelvis. And as the pelvi lies onto that block, the block is at the low setting or the mid setting. You're going to bring your knees both up and then extend the legs. We are going to do legs up twice today. We're going to do one at the wall. Okay, so right now what I want you to focus on is the kind of the root of the leg right now, which is kind of this exposed buttock zone, right? It's not against the wall, it's not pressing onto a bolster, so it feels a little more exposed. So I want you to feel where the feet are apart and there's traction, intensifying that flush of the lymph, the lymphatic drain, and then let the feet be still. They don't have to be completely isolated, but I want you to feel that drain to the legs. The arms could go to cactus. They could go straight back behind you. And let that movement here of inverting the body really feel that strength in the diaphragmatic blend, right? So the abdominal organs are pressing now into the diaphragm. So you have to convert the position into helping you actually strengthen, right? The weight of them is on the diaphragm. So as you inhale, you're going against that gravitational drop, right? So reversing and resting the organs from gravity's downward pull. Find stillness, perhaps eyes closed. Feel the combination of awareness here in the legs and that centering through the back of the pelvis. Now, as you witness that slow inhalation, and you relax on the out breath, let it go. Rest the abdomen, let it soften. You can feel that if you try to let the belly be relaxed in this shape, it actually naturally feels like there's some lengthening going on in that core layer because of how the legs are. They're not dropping down below you, so you don't have that gravitational kind of drag down of the core of the organs dropping down to the earth. So it's nice to have this position and relate to the organs. You know, we're going to kind of juice up in that land of Organville, okay? So I want you to let the feet feel where they have that separation. And then I'll encourage you to bend your knees in the phase out period here. Now, when you lower your feet on the bolster, this is where you want to bolster. Generally, a blanket under the head might be good for the supported bridge variation. It's often taught with something underneath your head, but not everybody agrees with that pressure and texture of the neck. So you'd be the decider here. But the arms are stretching straight out to the sides, and I'm going to stretch the legs down on top of the bolster straight down, and then take a sandbag on the top of the thighs, okay? So this will be a short shape, not short shape, but a short timing, not a long time in the shape. So get a feel here where the hips try to rotate out. Just kind of notice, don't get too alignment centric, like I have to get my knees to point towards the sky and I've got to make it perfection, but feel what your alignment reality is. And I want you to feel if you can get that sand maybe higher on the hip bones, the frontal hip bones, so that you could bring the legs closer in. If there's a lot of intensity in the low back, notice, this is a few more moments here. I just want you to get the kind of heat up into this hip space because we're going big hip soak coming up here. Now, as I move the sand away, okay, I can feel where the block is. So I'm going to put my hands on that block and then walk the feet up onto the bolster. Okay. Now, as you push down into your feet, lift your hips up, slide the block out. And then as you lower your spine down, I want you to bring that right leg up, cross it over the left, and then let the knees shift over to the right side. Now, you likely will have a block over there. So you're going to let the legs kind of serve them with some support. And if you're using a ball, that could work really nicely too, because you can kind of wedge it in higher under the leg and just feel that elasticity through the tissues, right? So I've got this left side beam of the exterior lateral hip. So take that left arm open, good. And then feel where that right limb is completely unoccupied with direction. Your right hand could be resting on your belly, could be resting anywhere near your right leg. And then let your head turn to the left. Experience that perspective of this side coat of your hip. And feel if you can maneuver your knees over to the right. Can you do any of your twisting with your breath, right? So instead of pressing and forcing the muscles or the structure into the shape, does your breath move into the shape as well? Are you breathing and guiding yourself? That's kind of the difference with a class, right? You have hopefully put the time aside for the experience. So kind of sinking in and letting the practice be felt for felt's sake. Okay, with the belly expanding and contracting. It's kind of a sideways belly, huh? Now we're going to move the knees as they come back into the center concentration. Slide the right foot up to the left knee. And then as that right knee points open, hands reach under to the back of your left thigh as it pops up and draws in towards you. And then feel that left leg being steered. It's steer kind of the focus of this left thigh to your core. Well, however that is for you reasonably right now, you're drawing your knees towards you. You might want that right foot to be a little bit more limp. You might want to keep it flexed. And the left leg should relax. The ankle, the foot, hold either below the left knee or behind the left thigh. Yeah, I can feel this one. If I have had an irregular practice, some of these very specific kind of deep entrenched shapes for right around the joint, right where the nerve pathways have, you know, quite a challenging flow, right, around the joints. So give a moment here before we kind of stretch out long the fairly complicated, intricate shape of the knees. And then I want you to let your hands kind of slide, if you have it below the knee, to the back of the leg. Most of us will find below the knee is a little bit more intense. But if you've had some knee history where that's not appropriate or too compressive, you're behind the leg. And then as I start to give up the slack on this, I'm going to lower my left foot to the bolster and then take a hold of that belt somewhere. Keeps you oriented in your little yoga space. Take your belt, reach it under your right foot, and as you move your right leg out with that right hand holding your belt, you're going to move the left knee open, and a block might be really helpful below the upper outer left buttock, right? So you might put that block pretty high under the leg. But as that right leg stretches open, it's a big time stretch, right? For the adductors. It's a kind of a groin. There's a lot of pressure there with the lymph. So many lymph nodes there. So it's a rather dense area. So if you need to kind of push around a little bit with your shoulders, kind of squiggle, do the squiggle, but feel that right foot pushing into the belt as much as you're pulling with your hand. So find some equal direction, opposing directions actually, right? With the foot pushing into the belt, the hand pulling onto the leg. If your wrist gets a little fatigued, be sure your elbow is on the floor. That seems to be an obvious choice, but it's important. And now we take that right leg up. I want you to slide the block away from under the left leg, keep the foot on the bolster, and then hold the belt with your left hand now, cross it over. And then kind of notice you can dance this one a little bit with your hip. You can hold the belt with the left hand with that crossover and kind of move the foot downstream, across, or a little bit up. This is good if you've had a little bit of time away from doing practice to kind of lubricate around the hip joint. So my right arm is anywhere, opening is good. Kind of lube around the joint, and that's going to go up into the lumbar too, right, into the discs. There's more than a leg and a hip and a calf. And then I want you to bring the right knee to bending. So you kind of hook the knee, stretch it up towards the foot up towards the ceiling, hold the belt with both of your hands. Left leg relaxes straight down the bolster. Turn it so it's back to lengthening and relaxing, so the heel might float, it might touch the floor, but go deeper into the calf. So I'm going to pull on my belt across the arch of my right foot, pull down with the hands. Yeah, and if you get your hands a little closer to your foot, go for it. But I like you to keep it so it's calf oriented. So let's say you can hold your foot. Let's say you're in that category. You kind of maybe are losing some of the calf extremes. You get more of the hamstring. So get a hold and pull and measurably use that hold on the foot to line up the low leg position. It's really healthy to get those calves. Get them to stretch out. I mean, they're downward. Their direction is the other way all day, so they're going to be a little bit yowzy right now. Yowzasana. Okay, now feel a little more maximum pull with the hands. Slide the left foot up onto the bolster, slide the belt off, and then right foot down, left leg up, cross it over, knees to the left, okay? It's gonna feel like you just did this right hip because we have been doing some of that cross layer work. So the second side will go pretty swiftly because we have some of the detail in the memory of the bones have the memory. Your mind might not be quite as memoric. Of the sequencing, but I imagine you'll find you can flow through it. Let's see. So feel this anchoring. This is called a counter twist, right? When you cross a leg over and then you drag the femur laterally over to the left. Right now, that right hip is being dragged over as well. And it's that attachment plate, right? That it needs to be kind of massaged and loosened up. So you certainly could get your fingertips to that plate and see if you can move and just kind of squiggle around. Doesn't have to be anything more than that. We'll get the sand on it in a few, so you'll get a little more. And then bring the knees back up and cross that left foot to the right knee. Hold on the back of the right thigh or below the knee. And then as you gain some motion of the leg into you, I want you to have your blanket under your head for this one, or a towel. It's important to have some even keel with the neck. And just keep it easy with the breath. Rest your face. You know, this is all very detail-oriented alignment that we're going through. And sometimes we get kind of heavy-handed on a lot of it in this session. So this might feel like a detailed beginning, but kind of feel if you can find the basic bones of support here. So the hands under the thigh or below the knee, and then that left foot is either flexed or it's relaxed. Yeah, it feels different enough that I'm going to relax it. And pull your leg towards you. Good. Now, any rocking side to side could be great for your hip and your back and your inner need to move. Sometimes it's good to inspire movement from the shape. But when we take that body weight back down to the bolster, you're going to slide the hands to either the back of the leg or just down to the floor. And then as the right foot finds its way back there, can we go into this side with the belt under that left foot? And I want you to move the right knee open and the left leg out. Okay, so it's kind of a quicker winding on this side. I've got a ball under my right outer thigh. Okay, so I kind of slide it in, simple enough. You might really like that support. Ball or block is fine. And then when you hold onto your belt, can you get your elbow on the floor? So there may be a easiness for some of you to hold your foot. That could happen. But I like you to try to keep it with the belt so that you can have something you're like wider that you're holding onto than a hand, right? With your foot, right? So if you could try and you're efforting with your hand holding your foot, just get a little bit of a longer reach with the belt. Okay, that right knee is motioning out with gravity. It may not be completely at ease, but feel the traction in the inner thigh. Adductor. Okay, now left leg comes up. Let's do the crossover here. Let's take that left leg over to the right. We're already in kind of motionary possibilities. That left leg as it crosses over, can you hold the belt with the right hand? The ball or block might not be good for you. For whatever reason, I like the ball a little more on this side than last side, so I'm going to keep it. And then when you feel that left foot push, we're going to bring it back up and then stretch that right knee to point up, hold the belt with both hands. Slide the belt to, you know, the arch of the foot, slide it down towards the heel, scrub your foot a little bit this way, but also get a feel when the right leg goes down and relaxes, how, you know, full of fluids you can kind of feel when you get in this type of position. Although it's more of a statement position for the leg, you know, it's kind of like a bolt, you know, of energy through the back muscles. So when I pull the leg towards me, I don't know if you identify with your back muscles, but the core is kind of that land in the center, right? Generally, you think of core center. So when you're moving your leg towards you, can you let the back relax? So you stretch your back. You know, really elementary back care is work like this, where you are resting your back when you're stretching it. So it doesn't require a lot of pressure on the joints, basically none, okay? Keep that in mind. Or keep it in the bones, not the mind. Just let the memoric, whatever that means. It's not really the proper lining of words, but that's what I mean, kind of the muscle memory. Okay, so as we fine tune this, feel where you're pulling that leg. Some of us, the leg is pretty far back, and some of us, it's straight up to that verticality, okay? So it's a little different for you with your calf, I imagine, if it's straight up. I think I'm preferring a little bit back. Okay, but we're gonna move into 2 sanded hip poses, okay? So kind of feel where the knee bends and that position where you go from a little bit of a left knee bend till you try to straighten it out, where it's maybe has a light bit of a response muscularly, could be a little tremor in the leg. But when you bend through that left knee now, you're gonna take your right foot up into the belt as well. You're just gonna hold that belt. If your belt is buckled up into a wide loop, that would be nice. You might like that because then you push your feet out. You can just let the loop hold your feet and not your hands. But give it a few seconds. I don't want it to be a long, maybe a 15-second position, but you're pushing out with your feet. So I want you to feel that push out. So it does bring some blood flow into the hip, kind of the base of this position. Bend your knees, hold the belt like happy baby pose. If you don't want to use the belt for this, you can hold the sides of your feet without your belt. That works just as well for some people. Some people that might work better right now. Okay, just happy baby. So the spine is fully lengthening down into the back of the pelvis. And now as you bring your hands to grab a hold of the belt and slide your feet together, or slide your hands down to the side of the knees, bring your knees into your chest, and then take your foot to the bolster, and we're gonna push it over to the right side of our mat. And I want you to go right into the crossover. We have a few moments for a final kind of hip sanding on our back so we can get up in a moment. But right now, I'll try to be present. So as you cross the leg to the right, you're going to either put a block or a ball to the sacrum or nothing. And you're going to add your sand to the exterior left hip. So lift up some sand or rice bag, whatever you have, that's 5 to 12 pounds is good. That's probably your maximum you want to aim for. And then put that sand so that it's giving some feeling into the skin. Get that dermal feeling first. Does that make sense? The dermal feeling, so you feel the actual touch of the weight. And then you want to suggest kind of gearing that sand a little to the right, so it's over towards the base of the leg, maybe over the knee, the side of the left knee, and then turn your head now completely towards the left. Okay, so I know this is a pretty simple first, 40 minutes, but we're trying to get some back layer that's comfortable and easeful into our legs and our hips. And let your eyes close. And feeling if the movement of your breath can be how you experience the twist, right? Can you use the exhale to do what experiences sometimes the structural pressures, right? To get the knee farther over. Even though that can feel like there's accomplishment, or you get to kind of the edge of the position, like you're completing it, and then you can settle into the shape. So I understand those needs. You got to try, right? There's some effort in here to do the practice. But you can also lay back and let your body be in the shape and feel if you can manage awareness where like your inner space is creating a twist, right? So you're massaging the organs. Continue to rest the abdomen as you breathe. With each tug of breath, the belly expands, and then it softens and it twists. Turn your head so it goes, well, it doesn't turn, it comes back up to center. And then we bring the left arm back down to the ball, move it, And then slide the sand away. And now in between, I want you to hug your knees in and circle. So do a circling sacrum both directions. Heavy on the circle. Now get a hold of that bolster. However you do, maybe you fine tune doing circling with bolster reaching. And then place it to the left. And then left leg straight-ish, right leg crossover-ish. Doesn't have to be positioned so it's perfectly the same. You kind of, it's sort of the muscle memory is, it's intact, but it's almost amazing to observe this sometimes that we might actually let the leg, the next side go, that we roll more onto the hip and the core body, the mid-chamber. So kind of notice what you are rolling into in your left hip, and the right hip is crossed over. I've got a sandbag now I'm putting onto my right outer leg. And then that ball is an option. I know some of you might have not necessarily exactly this, but you might have something bigger than a tennis ball. Maybe a Nerf would work. Might. A block works fine. You know, there's similar application for the position of the sacrum to be balanced. But you do want to get a feel here where your leg is reaching to the left, the right leg, the knee. And then when that right arm opens, you're going to roll your neck to the right. And it might take a couple rolls, head to left, head turns to the right. And then get a feel how the belly moves with the breath. And there's no right or wrong with the direction of your hip right now. I know there's quite a bit of direction of it going to the left, the right leg, but you might get something out of a little bit of the arch of the spine. Okay, so kind of play with that, a little bit of the arch of the spine. Arms both open. Soak it up. Little hip soaking. Feel the abdomen expand and contract. Okay, now when we start to move ourselves out from our back space, being on our back space, we've actually used this time to let that space soften. But it'll be nice to have it open towards the sky. In some ways, we can move around and explore. So it'll be quite an exploration in the next 10 minutes or so. So when you move the ball or block away, you're going to put that and the sand aside, okay? And I want you to take the blocks, so you're going to have them both kind of an easy reach. The main objects you'll be using are blocks and bolster, and maybe the belt, we'll see. Okay, so let's bring our knee on that right side, right knee, sorry, over and into the center. And if your bolster's kind of there, you can kick it a little forward. But you're gonna roll up to sitting, and you kind of get a feel. Maybe you roll up, maybe you roll back. Kind of is a tailbone issue, isn't it? What does that feel like for you? When you do come up to the center spot here, I want you to get a feel back to your sitting bones, and then just lean back. Don't worry about grabbing props or this and that, but feeling your body, feel what rounds, feel what's kind of hooked into pressure. And then when you do come up to sitting, we're going to take the bolster in front, and we're going to lift it up and then take our legs till they stretch outwards to either a V shape or they're a little bit into the mat. It's either is fine, but I want you to stretch your back so the inner thighs have to press down. You know, it's not quite the whole inner lining of the knee, but you'll likely feel the sitting bones and the legs stretch open. Okay, now the feet flex. This is important. Feet are flexing. Feel your spine directing. So it's like the spine was, well, it just is lifting up now. Let's go with that. Now, as soon as those legs turn in, especially the high thigh is trying to drop in, the heels are already moving in. Before you know it, they're turned in. Now, when you come up, you're going to push the bolster forward. And I want you to come up to a table pose. So let's lean our knees over to one side, come up to table, take your blankie in from behind, from backyard to the center yard. And then we'll take our bolster in front of the blanket. So you got kind of this shape of the crossing of the bolster and blanket, right? So that's straightforward. And then place your body to a hands and knees or elbows down. Now, if you're going to go elbows down, you won't probably have your bolster just like this. It'd be in front of you, right? Because you won't have space to come down if the bolster is in your way. Your head will be stuck. So you're either going to have hands down or elbows down, and you're going to toes under, round your back, chin to chest, cat pose. Inhale, arching. Okay, so feel that wave of traction in your spine. Chin to chest, arching. Breathe. Okay, I want us to give a moment of where we move our tailbone back. And it's like you are trying to move it under a little bit, huh? Now, when you come back to that natural arch, if you can call this a natural position for your back muscles, we're going to bring our hands out a little wider. If you were on your elbows, you're going to slide your bolster in underneath your front, and then you're going to lie onto the bolster with your ribs. But before you get too passive now and lower down in your elbows, I want you to have your hands open besides your bolster, palms, press release, kind of sunburst hands. And then feel where the tops of the feet kind of dot a little bit. You know, you can kind of tap your feet, but bring the knees apart. This is important. I know it feels maybe a little awkward with this bolster, but I know it's right in front and it kind of presses down. But if you are feeling a lot of pressure at the front of the pelvis, I want you to let your chest move a little bit down, but feel your arms stretch off the floor straight back beside you. And your superpowers sweep, and then take it so that you're fairly low. You're not going to try to push and lift up your head any higher. You're strengthening your posterior core. Okay. All right. Now bring your right elbow down. You got one elbow down on the floor, so it's half of a sphinx pose. Your left arm is back. Now, can you bring your chin towards your chest? So it is kind of funky. Chin to chest, the arm, left arm is back. We're strengthening the core. Left hand is on your back now. Oh, that feels better. Whew, a little bit of support. So left hand is on back, right elbow is down, chin to chest. Okay, now the back has to have the knees far enough out to be supported. If you're really scrunching in your knees, it's going to be harder on your back. Now bring the left elbow down, chin to chest. That's easier, huh? It's nice to have two elbows. And then take that right arm back so it's stretching back besides you first. Try to feel your chin to your chest. Right hand on your back, palm open to the ceiling. Elbow is out on that right arm. Ooh, maybe a little arm energy. Okay, now, elbows both down. Make the brain move to a space where it's a little more comfortable for your neck. So it might not be tucked in, it might be neutral. Okay, and really get heavy on your elbows. Let them push down. Keep the elbows right under your shoulders. If they're a little forward, you're going to tuck your elbows back. Okay, now slide the hands back, toes under. Well, you could come up with the toes relaxed, actually. You choose. But when you come up, chest forwards, lengthen. Big reach with the chest. I want you to try to use the bolster under the front of the pelvis to support you. Now, try it with the toes stretching back, relaxing the top of the foot. Try it with the toes under. And then when you bring your knees under your hips and you're going to come back to table and lift up the knees, stretch the back of the heels towards the floor, of course. Yeah, so this reach with the legs is important. So I want you to feel where your sitting bones reach back and up. And then walk your hands back to Uttanasana. So we're going to slide the feet a little forward towards our blanket. You're going to adjust any clothing you need so you feel comfy to actually get your legs and your spine to completely lengthen. And then let gravity stretch your spine. So you're going to let the weight of your head nod. If you're not comfortable with this shape, this inversion, remember you can bring your feet out a little wider. Anybody can. And then hug the legs so it's more of a standing child's pose. Or you can reach your hands to your elbows and hold on and let that holding be also a form of traction for your back. So my purpose here is when I hold my elbows, I also have traction in my upper back and my shoulders. It's kind of an interesting place to get traction via inversions would be your shoulders to get literally loosening. Now you could do elephant swing, right? You're making figure eights in space, holding your elbows, change the crossing. Really the hands holding the elbows is the trunk, right, of the elephant. Sweeping something, even if it's air or it's getting closer downwards. And then as you dynamic motion is to let the weight of your feet press, the knees bend. Head heavy. Okay, please try to get a few more moments here. Now, if this is uncomfortable, you get lightheaded when you're upside down even, you can always find a wall spot. We'll be here a few more moments with your seat against the wall. And that can really help, right, with the difficulties, right, into the brain, into the, just that shift in blood flow through the body. So if it's a little concerning for you, use your the wall for your seat. Okay, now we're going to let go and carefully walk our way back forward. And I want you to take a step with your, let's see what we're going to go. We're going to go left foot out to the bolster, left foot to the left side of the bolster. Got it. Top of the right thigh down on the bolster. Hands on blocks or floor. You choose. Your body's going to choose that one. So if you're kind of leaning and it feels too much of a descent for the front of your right thigh, you can put blocks under your hands. And that will not make it quite as critical of a, pressure in the whole seam of that right leg. It could feel good, but some of us might want our blocks so we can put our elbows on them. There's other reasons for the blocks. It could be elbows on blocks. Okay, now finding the stretch of the front of that right thigh. Feel if your back knee has enough of a bend into it that you could move the hip a little side to side to massage through the front of that right thigh. This can have some real deep loosening, right, experiences, loosening the threads in the quads and the hip flexors and the psoas. So if you've been told you have a tight psoas, right, or you round your back a lot, right, this is a good area to stretch, even though it looks like we're hunching over quite a bit. We're stretching this whole front layer, right, of the thigh, right, which tends to be, oh, it grips up when we sit down. When we're moving forward, it grips more than the other side. Okay. Now I want you to take a switcheroo. So you're going to bring the left foot back and switch through. And as the right foot steps to that side, it's for me, it's besides my block. But you don't have to have your block set up like this. You can have no blocks. You can have your elbows on your bolster. It's a little narrow for me. You can have your hands on the floor, and if you have long arms, that's probably going to be where you go. And your right foot is quiet. It's turned out, but it's pretty still. It's not too shaky. It's stable. And then feel that awareness of the front of the left thigh, centering into the kind of the pit, right, of the front of the hip. The things we do to loosen up these structures that we're inhabiting, so we can feel a little bit more comfortable in them. All right, now this isn't going to go away, this leg stuff. So you can take a break though, if you would like to. This is a good break moment. So those of you that need to take a break, take one. The rest, we'll keep going with it. So we'll have that left thigh, we'll kind of feel the bolster. It's like a self-massage tool here, right? And some of you, the leg might be close, maybe on, the bolster maybe a little bit up, but it's the direction you're going that's important of the leg, okay? Not that you're touching down, you're squishing the bolster, but that it's going that direction. So now when we lift up the left knee, we're going to turn our bolster horizontally across our mat. You need some blocks to help you get here. And you're going to walk your right foot back into the center, slide your blocks on the sides of your foot, and then turn to your left, pivot both feet, and I want you to take a wide stance. So I'm going to walk my feet a little bit back so I can walk out the leggings. Right, and feel that toes in awareness, and the feet, well, they're definitely wider than the hands. Not many people practice with the width of the hands as the feet. However, you could scoot your feet in a little bit and then bring your hands to the legs. So I'm going to give you about 4 variations here. Okay, so first one, drinking giraffe. We got our hands forward. It's a wide downward dog. And your head leans down. If you've got props that get stuck in your way, you can move them aside, or you can enjoy having a prop under your head. Okay, that's one option. Okay, 2 is to hold the legs. And if you do get to this version and you have that mobility, you probably get your head down, I bet you. So if you're close, or you're sort of close, play with the alignment of the legs. The wider they go out, right, it's going to be easier to go down with the brain. The closer they go in, it might be more comfortable for some of us. So if you're a little bit leery on these inversions, you might want to bring your feet closer and then let the crown of the head move towards the floor. Okay, so head down, seat up, elbows wide. Okay, find one of those versions that you can land in for a few moments, okay? Either hands on the blocks, chest and legs stretch, okay? Or hands on the legs. If you're a little bit on the verge of having hip flexor issues, I would recommend the hands on the blocks, even if it seems like the easy way, because you can steer the reach of the sitting bones and put the feet to parallel, kind of like you're learning how to drive your body in some ways. That's kind of how this is going, isn't it? So your seat reaches back, and then you can feel this kind of light arch in the rib cage, and then the brain is between the arms. Okay, let's take ourselves up for a moment. Let's take a moment here. Walk the blocks in so that you can get your wits about this one. So my hands are onto the support, and as I bend my knees, I'm going to scoot my feet in so that they're wide stance, but they're doable to stand up. So if you get a little bit of concern about how your consciousness will be when you stand up, right? If you're lightheaded nature, you're going to really want to plug into your feet and then bring your hands to your hips. And when you come up, what we'll do is we'll move our hips forward. So it's like you're pushing your hips towards the front of the space to get the hip port, right, the front of the hip bones to move. Okay, now you'll feel if you scoot your feet closer in, they will go a little farther forward, right? You can feel that, but focus is on that side lane. So I want you to bring your left hand, I'll be doing the same side as you. So if you see me in a mirror image, I don't know how it's going to appear to you, but I have my left hand on my left outer hip. My right arm reaches over to the left, and I'm going to look down to my left foot. Okay, so I'm reaching through that side. But you know what's different? You're trying to push your hips forward. It might feel a little bit intense. Okay, so turn your left foot out. Just keep going with it and stretch over towards that left. So it's like a standing triangle pose, but we're not putting our hand on our knee or the floor or block. Our hand is still on our left hip. Okay, I hope that feels better in your ankles to have that direction. Come back up. We're going to switch sides, right hand to right hip, left arm stretches over. If you notice your lower back gets tight with this foot forward position, turn your right foot out first off, and then lean to that right side. My right elbow is pushing a little bit behind me. I've got a micro bend the right knee so I don't hyperextend. Little soft bend. Stretch through that left side. Yeah, use the movement of the arm to reach to the waist. Good, and then turn to your right leg. So the left arm is stretching, you're turning your right leg. You're going to bend the knee, and then you're going to actually lower down onto your hands, pivot that left heel up, and then take your bolster under that right leg. Okay, take a reach. Now, walk your right foot over to pigeon pose. Okay, right knee is open, left knee is back on my blankie. Okay, take your time to get here. I know you might have a couple prop malfunctions to get here, but you're going to try to get onto that bolster. So the right knee is open and the legs are still pretty sharply working, although they've now gone downwards. So the blocks could be under your elbows. Your other blanket could come in because it's about time to get your other blanket back to Yoga Central here. So I like this one. So I put my elbows down and I use the forward folding position for pigeon to bring myself here. And so steady that circulation through your hip, right hip. Now you can walk your hands to the top left side of your space, right? It doesn't have to be on your mat. It could be a little bit off of your mat to the left. It's a little bit deeper through that right hip. Let's just say getting into this is not going to be work for you, this pigeon. I'll give a modification. So you could sit on the bolster, just like so, right leg crossed in front of the left. Have your blocks, right? And use those blocks in front of your knees and lean forward. Okay, so that would be an option for you right now if you're not going to be letting the knees be in this position with the bolster, okay, before we switch through. So I'll show that modification when we get to the second side. But for those of us in that pigeon pattern with the leg crossed over the bolster and hooked around it with the foot, you can veer to the left for a few more moments. Try to get that right seat, like you're getting your right seat to swish back. It's a switchback pose, right? You're trying to push back into that right seat. So a slow breath, a forward bending breath. And let it go. Now we're going to switch sides in pigeon land. So those of you that are in the leg hooked position, you could do a down dog in between if you're feeling so inspired, right? So some of you might go down dog and then left leg forward and go in, and some of you might decide to stay on your bolster. So I'll show the bolster version as you would just bring that left leg forward, cross, and back, okay? Those of you down dog version are gonna go push back, toes under, right foot back, reach back through that hip, right? And then switch that side, right? And those of you seated are gonna switch over to left foot in front of that right shin and then take the blocks under, okay? So find that version that gets you in the next side. Take your time to arrive. And those of us that are in our seated pose, you really want to feel the flesh of the buttocks kind of fleshed out on the bolster. And let's say you don't lean forward and it's enough for you to be here and tilt. That's plenty. This might be enough, is to be here. Not necessarily pushing farther down. So you choose. You can even sit upright, do cat-cow, explore the exhale process, leaning. And that process is the same when you're in that pigeon foot hook, pigeon hook, okay? So my elbows are down, I'm on either the bolster or the blocks, and then I start to go to the right side. The blocks are different, right? Because they're a little more defined than a blanket. And where that left hip is experiencing that flow of motion, yeah, keep arriving at a current of breath. Yeah, and this final spinal, noticing where your attention is, if it's in the session, if it's wandered. Be kind to yourself. It's easy to get distracted. So feel where your hip is right now. Where's the hip? Where's the low back? You know, where that back balance is, you kind of have the leg behind you for those of us in this direction to anchor you. And some of us might choose to have the blocks in front, whether we're sitting cross-legged, left foot in front, or we're in pigeon and we like this position better. So now we're kind of left with this motion of the pelvis. We started with some interesting crossovers on the bolster, and we're going to tune up some of those layers right now, coming into our seated, a short seated phase. So get a feel where the length is around that left buttock. I don't know if you feel like your rear has length. So you can kind of feel the tail behind you. And then when you walk the hands up on the blocks and you bring yourself to center, you're going to manage this motion. So we want to keep this intra-abdominal pressure when we go into a seated twist. So that's important. I want to have that be our main emphasis here. So you're going to come back and around and sit. And then, let's see, I'll face to you a little bit on this one. So you're going to be on your bolster. Left thigh is closer in than the right, okay? And put a block under your right foot. So just for ease sake, okay, block under your right foot. Yeah, we might use the other blankie soon. Okay, we'll see. Block under right foot. Thank goodness for variety, I guess. Place a sandbag on your left leg and just kind of notice here when the arms are open. Right, so I want you to get a feeling where your body's going to turn to your right. You're going to bring your right hand back to one or two blankets. So I kind of like the two stack. That just works better for short meat. But you know, you might want to have one or none. Okay, so this right knee's kind of high, my knee's up. So feel your ribs move towards your right leg and feel that spinal spiraling of the torso. Now your hand is usually kind of pulling you into the position, like, see, I can do the pose kind of thing for your, I don't know, maybe for the ego is a little bit of that, you know, I can do the pose and do it. Maybe that's a little bit of a high thought with it, but what I'm going to have us do is we're going to come back forward and we're going to try to take this twist with the right foot besides the left leg. So I want you now to scoot your left leg across and you're going to put that right foot besides the left leg. So you're in a seated right crossover. So you got your left thigh down, sand on, right foot across to the floor. Okay. If this doesn't work for your bones, your knees, you're going to put your right foot on the block, the bottom of the foot down. Make a little spot on your block. Paint your foot and then make a little mark. All right, so as you turn now to the right, I want you to feel the left hand hold on to the right knee and then spine, center, heart lifting. Bring your right hand back to the blanket and then start the twist and feel if you can work with a very subtle, that intra-abdominal pressure, right, is what strengthens your diaphragm. So I want you to work with the breathing to bring you into the twist versus the force of the arm. I know you've got to use your arm strength to hold this position, but can you lighten that up and re-inspire the belly moving and that exhale to take you into the twist. And if that right hand doesn't get back very far, use the right shoulder strength to move it back. See if you can get the shoulder back. Give it a few more moments. Your lower belly awareness. You come back into the front, turn back forward, good. Hopefully good. And then when we come out on that side, you're just simply going to move out with that right leg. You don't have to take your sand off. You don't want to right then, but take the right leg back out and bring your feet together to where they've been in the beginning. Soles of the feet together. See if you can get a hand touch on the upper inner leg. It doesn't have to be right to the knee, but just a little bit above. And then move the knees outwards and lean forward. Your feet could be farther forward. Your feet could be holding a block. I mean, there's a lot of variations for this one. The block is a pretty good one. Okay. So what I think of is when I hold the block in this width, it's mid setting. It's flat. Well, actually, it's not mid setting. Huh? It's the low setting flat. But on your foot, it's the second setting width. It brings that space to the lumbar spine, which most of us just want this area to be open and just loose and let go of gripping around the kidneys, okay? So when we switch the leg, I want you to bring the right foot in, left foot up, the knee is open. Add your sand to the right thigh, be kind of technical about it. Not techno, but technical. Get your seat back on your bolster. And then right hand to left knee, and we turn. Yeah. So we either gaze over to the other side of the room or to our cat, or turn the focus inwards and close the eyes, a good one to do. And feel where you're using your arm muscle to turn yourself. So I want you to notice is that's going to go up to your neck. So we'll get out of this one sooner. We'll come back forward. And now we'll cross the left leg over the right leg, right? So you're in this cross legged pattern, the sand on right thigh, the left leg crosses over. I think we got that awareness. Left foot is down, right foot is open. You can put your foot on a block too. And then bring the right elbow right to that left leg. Now, it's kind of interesting. Last time you used your hand to pull, now you're using the back of that right arm to help turn your body. So even though I'm showing you the other arm that you're working, like for instance, your right arm is doing the work, but it's this whole back layer, right? So you're moving through the rotator cuff, you're moving back through the upper fascial layers. So when I put that elbow to the left leg, I am trying to get into that stretch of my back. So kind of think about your back, kind of this open cape. Chin can be relaxed, head could be centered. As long as the chin isn't pushing up to the sky, you're good. You can smile, you don't have to smile. And get that feel where the rotation occurs in your back. And then breathing. Right, we want the body to move into the twist through a breath. Just for this time. Get a few more moments here. It'll be kind of a nice unwinding in the next few poses. Feel the turn. Feel the ribs. You might still feel kind of elementary with twists, like you're still using your muscles to muscle into it versus intercostals, the muscles between the ribs. So if your breath is taken away here, we're going to follow up with side sage, so it might be a little more obvious what you can do with twists. And then just let go of the pressure and then come out, come forward, come out. And then uncross that left leg. And I want you to take the sand aside, uncross, do any shakeout that you need or tapping around the legs. And then scoot yourself carefully off your bolster. And we'll take side sage. And I want you to bring your bolster right next to your left hip. And we'll do a couple more poses before legs up. So I want you to take your bolster down right next to your side of your rib cage. And you can use a block or a ball on the inside of that right leg. And you're going to put a sandbag on the side of your waist, if you have one, of rice or sand. And then as you reach overhead, you might need a block under your hand. A block or a stool or a chair seat can work just as well. But feature the change in the direction of the lungs. You might really notice those subtleties in your breathing muscles for something like this. Coming from a seated twist into a seated side bend. Side sage. So come into the shape, let the body kind of enjoy resting over the props and then down into the props. You can sink in a little bit. Notice when you breathe in, if it tends to be something where you feel your eyes pull in further. So you want to feel like your face is content, not tightening the face with the breath. Now the right leg can go as far back as you want to move it, right, to get that front thigh to open. But enjoy the reach of the ribs to help your lower back and that mobility and elasticity of your lungs. The lung of the lungs is the ribs, huh? Good. Now feel that you could be here as long as you want. These last few poses are not a time specified assignment, right? So if you want to be here longer, you certainly will. And those that want to come out are going to roll onto our back. So I have my block behind me, overhead right now. I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to move my right arm down to my sand, and I'm going to slide it away. And I'm going to bring my right knee next to my left knee. And then I'm going to scoot my hips down. And I'm going to carefully roll onto my back. Now this is a sensitive one, right? You have to kind of lift up your head and then get here. It's a mountain brook pose, so it's pretty deep lung. And if it feels like, oh, my back doesn't adapt, walk your feet a little wider. I go wider with the feet, and then let the tail stretch down. So there's that visualization of the tailbone moving as far down away from the brain stem as you can make it. It's a pretty short distance, right? But just imagine that having a little more arch through the spine. Yeah, and then we'll let that come into the second side stage when you're ready to go to the right hip. So you could be here longer if it's interesting. Or start to turn over to your right hip. And your arms are in the same place, right? They didn't really change much. You might get something under your left inner leg. You might not care for that. And then when you adjust into this right side, I get a sandbag, goodie. Sandbag with goodies. Okay. All right. Then the hand goes up over to the block. And then finding what's interesting just in the moment, not a comparison necessarily. There's a little bit of comparative work because we got two sides. That's just kind of how it goes, isn't it, in the body, in everything. But my feeling is that the places that are restless and those kind of dormant areas that are sleepy and they just are not much going through them energy-wise, see if you can tap into some of those right now. Maybe it's the kind of corner of the hip, a little crevice in the waistline, the waistband. Yeah, and then go into that so that left arm is stretching over the left side of your head towards the block. Now feel the weight of your hip. And feel where that reaches of the ribs, and they're lengthening, right? It's not a lateral movement for your ribs at all. It's a lengthening. And notice the peace that comes from just being still in your practice. It goes one way or the other way. Then we just let that sand go on its own, right? If I open the left arm out, my chest stretches wider, the sand might tend to come away. Okay, now we're going to transition to a complete inversion where obviously the head is going to be a little bit lower, right, than the pelvis. That's why it's classified inverting. And so we're going to try legs up the wall or the couch or the chair or the sofa, whatever you have around to put your legs up, okay? So I want you to feel when you come out, your body rolls into that right hip. And then when you find your way to a spot, you might do the hands and knees for a moment, just kind of adjust your spine. And no abruptness is necessary. And then we'll take a bolster to the wall. This is the longer class, but we have the longest one of the week, but we have a few more moments here. So take advantage of this inverted time where you have a few minutes in it. And if you ever want to stay longer than what I mentioned, you can always stay until past the exit of class if you want to be in this pose for 15 minutes. And so when you come up to this position, I tend to sit with my tush at the wall. I got my blanket next to my bolster. It's a little bit away from where my head is going to be. And then when I roll and swing my legs up, I want my rear as close as I can get. It feels a little obnoxious how close it is, to be honest. But when I do roll, then swing my legs up, it's just so much easier to get my seat closeness to the wall. If it's not super close, that's okay. Some people like to have a space between their rear and the bolster and the wall, so the rear sets in between and it's a little bit tucked in. So that's one teaching. Now we can add our sand to our feet. So feel where your feet have that flesh flexing and where the back muscles are feeling that extension. So we're trying to place that lift of our feet so that there is weight, which drains down and intensifies the flow of lymph. And then when we feel that weight, I want you to notice the balance of the pelvis on the bolster and a little bit of a bend through the knees. So your heels set onto the wall. Now stretch your arms back overhead and then feel what it's like to have them overhead and then back out to cactus pose, elbows wide. Let your eyes center back. If you have any hardware on your face, any glasses, you might want to remove those because it tends to tighten the muscles right around the eyes just to have them on. Okay? And then for the next few moments, we're just going to simply let that inversion start to take effect. So to receive the benefits, we place the body so it's resting the organs from gravity's downward pull. So the opposite of prolapse is happening. So you can feel the pelvis touching the bolster. Feel the arch of the spine and the land of the lower back spreading open. Belly full. Exhale, relax the core. Each abdominal breath moves the abdominal muscles. Right? It places the weight of the abdominal organs onto the diaphragm. So during the inhalation, the diaphragm must lift them and strengthens the actual diaphragm. And on the exhale, the excursion of the abdominal organs naturally flows in the opposite direction of their daily habit. And the exhalation lengthens this way. It's a natural way of shifting so you can stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, the calming reflex. So the exhalation lengthens. Now let's try to balance the inhale with the exhale. So you feel like you're breathing a little faster, actually, if you're upside down, doing that type of metric action, right, with the breath. Because the exhale is naturally longer upside down. And then we'll go a count of 4 in, belly full. And then 5, count, exhale. Inhale 4. Exhale for 5. Bend your knees. The That's the only lesson you're left with, right? Exhale 1 count longer than inhale. And then get a feel of the feet as they pulse off of the wall with the sand. Bend the knees. You can let your hands slide in a little bit. So if you drop your sand overhead, it's not surprising for your hands. And then bring your knees to point out and your feet together. If you're on a sofa, you can still do this. You can still have the feet together, knees out, just like we started in class. It works equally. It's just you have a little more height under your legs. That's the goal. And this way they're up. And then bring your knees to point in towards your shoulders. And let's roll to the side. Take any few moments you need as you get your body belongings to come up to sitting. And as we kind of park our landing here on a seating position, either on a bolster, kind of come to the collective consciousness of the group practicing together. That's always helpful, just to have that awareness of unity. Your eyes might be open, might be closed, but see if you can move that list of attention inwards to the heart space and lift the hands up to meet at the heart. Bow the brain down into the heart center and surrender here. Breathing in the practice, the centering influence together. Let's unite our focus to receive wellness. Inhale. And exhalation, bowing into your heart. And gratitude, namaste. Okay.